is going to be Mario. He'll be like, yeah, I did it.
Oh, so they got him?
They arrested a person of interest, yeah.
Because the guy that they were showing on TV and from their social media didn't look like the same person.
It looked like a girl.
Yeah. But anyway, welcome to another podcast episode of the Bros Bookshelf, where we let the content of the book drive the discussion. I'm your host, Lennon Givens, and I'm joined here with my beautiful wife, Dr. Teresa Givens.
Hello.
And we have hailing from the Geechee Gullah Islands of Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, my line brother, Donovan, the Deuce Dog.
What's happening?
We also have another line brother, the 15, from Hawaii by way of Boston, Mr. Stephen Gilliam.
What's up? That's good.
And we have the smooth, silky baritone voice of Dr. Harvey Hinton the third. And Mr. Harvey has introduced a special guest, brought on a special guest on the podcast. I'll let you take it from here, Harvey.
Hey, dog, you know, we've had some awesome guests on this show. You know, first of all, we got an all-star cast to begin with, but we have had some awesome guests on this show. And the brother that we have tonight is going to extend that list of great commentaries. We have the president and chief people strategist of Lighthouse Strategy Consulting. Listen, this guy we have tonight is one of the people I consider one of my OGs, like straight up. Like this guy, I've met probably about maybe 10 years ago. I don't even know if it's been that long. But this is somebody that I have a lot of regard for, somebody who understands our struggle as a people, somebody who is super cool. It's going to feel like we talking to Quincy Jones or somebody tonight, y'all. I'm telling you. I got my man on the mic, man. I got a guy named Mr. Paul James, y'all. Give it up for Paul James. Paul is the only person I know that probably listens to Miles Davis and Roach and Coltrane every day. Like that's his probably regular everyday playlist, you know. So he's one of them kind of brothers. What's up, Paul?
What's up, sir? Thank you for having me. Thanks, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be here. It's also a pleasure to see this brother hosting with his queen next to his side. This is a pedagogical format that we have forgotten about. Harvey, I don't know. Harvey, remember, what are you laughing at, brother? Help me.
Hey, because we don't have that in the space often. You know what I'm saying? Like, keep talking. Just keep going with that.
Yeah.
Starting out strong.
So we are duty bound to the degree possible to co-present with the feminine energy. We're duty bound to do that. So if nothing else, I take away from this the fact that to see this brother who's hosting this, leading with his co-regent, I think is worthy to be praised and must be called out. So I just wanted to highlight that. Thank you for having me, gentlemen. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for that big, that big endorsement.
Mm-hmm. And Teresa, thank you for tolerating Lenny. We all appreciate that.
Yes.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
And so does he.
Somebody got to do it. Somebody got to do it.
No, somebody don't. But welcome. Thank you for being here. And thank you for pointing that out. I actually just saw something today about the Black family and that we are on the decline, and that is a big problem with our wealth. So you bringing that up brought something.
What did that mean?
Full circle for
what
me
did that mean,
today.
Teresa, that we was on a decline in what you was reading, in the context
Well,
of what you was reading?
it wasn't really a read. It was so let me be real transparent. It was actually on Instagram, but the person who was talking seemed to be well credentialed. So, hey, but he was just speaking about, and of course I did not fact check it, but He said, I think the Asian community and the
Ooh.
East Indian community was on the rise. And they were maybe 70-80% with marriage rate, and that their wealth is also increasing, and that they use that as a barometer of all of such. And then he discussed that we were last and the lowest in the African American community. And as such, our wealth is about the same because we are no longer getting married and respecting the institution of marriage and family. So not just marriage, but marriage and nuclear family.
Mm.
Yeah, just saw that today.
I think that kind of is a good segue into the kind of the premises of this book. And Harvey, you picked this book of Water and the Spirit, Ritual, Magic, and the Initiation of the Life of an American Shaman by Malidoma Patrice Some. Harvey, why did you pick this book?
Well, like, we've been doing this podcast maybe 4 years now, and when I first told Paul about it 4 years ago, this is one of the books that he recommended. And I was like, man, we can't talk about that, man. The audience ain't trying to hear that right now, man. Like, they ain't trying to hear this. But I read it back then, and the type of work that I do, Paul told me about it for a reason. And it just resonated. And I just enjoyed this book. I can't tell you how many times I've listened to it. It's only 3 hours to listen to. So I cannot tell you. I don't have lit bars tonight, y'all. I'm going to be honest with you. Because what I wanted to do was just read passages from the book. Because it's such a great piece of material for me. In terms of like the way he shares his experience. I've dealt with numerous brothers from the continent. And this is an experience that we don't get to talk about often. Like this rites of passage, the idea that there's a different way of seeing the world, right? And so yeah, I think all of those reasons, and I wanted to have Paul with us tonight, so it was just kind of like, I think the right time was like, yeah, I think it's a good time to talk about this, like self-transformation, rites of passage, history, family, all that good stuff. I think it was the right time. So. What'd you think?
Gracious.
What you think, Lynn? What'd you think?
What I think,
Yeah.
Reading this book took me back to a space of in 2008 when I first met you. That was a time where I was transitioning. I had just lost my mother the year before, and I was questioning everything about my belief system, reflecting back on how she lived her life, reflecting back how she transitioned, and just everything I questioned. Then Steve, that's on the podcast with us now, Steve has always been young, just aside. I grew up in the South in Monroe, Louisiana, and my Christian beliefs were rooted in God the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost, Jesus Christ. That's all we had. It was either that or the devil, right? So meeting Steve in college and hearing, we were really close, and he would always make little comments like, oh yeah, you ever heard of a Gnostic, or you ever heard of, just different things I never heard of. And he used to just make comments about my religion and stuff. And I used to just think he was an asshole and not take him serious.
He was.
I would listen. So fast forward.
2 things can be true.
Yeah, exactly. So fast forward to 2007, 2008, the transition of my mother and me questioning everything. Steve had sent me like this YouTube of this documentary called The Zeitgeist.
Zeitgeist,
So I saw that.
Oh.
And then I met you, Harvey. I met you at the Clave. And you were studying, you were getting your PhD in African American curriculum, I believe.
Curriculum studies, but I was trying to say to people. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay, curriculum studies. See, I'm a little sharp. But the conversations and the information you would introduce me to, and the studies, and your friend house that we went to, and we used to look through the telescope at the moon.
Oh, Dave.
Yes, Dave in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Shout
It
out
made
to
me
Dave
start.
Thomas.
It started me on a new path. Then you introduced me to Ray Hagen, and then I just started going down a whole nother rabbit hole. So this is like a reunion of all of that, and this is like lets me know that there is a whole nother world. We have been so far removed from our ancestry of tradition and rituals that we're saying things like what my wife just said. We're moving away from, the marriage and the wealth and the things like that because we are so empty and been fed the wrong foods for our body type. It's just we're malnourished spiritually. And just this book, and the things that's taking place in this book, we've been taught that this is witchcraft. This is black magic. This is voodoo. This is taboo. But this was a way of life for them. So much so that they were connected to the other worlds. They talking about all kinds of stuff.
Hey, let me ask you this before you go in.
Let's just get into it, you guys.
But before you go any further, though, is it aggressive?
No, it's not.
No.
It's
Is he saying the white man lied to you and the white man devil? Is he saying all that?
No, he's just talking about his lived experience.
Well, he also doesn't have to. He's just like there's a bankrupt culture, right? Like he touches on it at first a little bit, but then he just dismisses it because it's not worth his time. It's more important to communicate his part of his duality, but it's really his culture and all that we're missing and the importance of that. He talks about that and does not give power to or be reactive to like the white man's colonialism or whatever. He's just conscious of expressing and sharing like, hey, this is my journey that I went through and this is what we're missing out on.
But he does acknowledge that we, the Western Americans, the only country that doesn't acknowledge or pay homage to their ancestors.
We don't have any.
Because we don't have any. Exactly.
But don't we?
What's that sound, Donovan? Is that you?
It's feedback.
Oh, feedback.
Mic check. Mic check. Mic check.
Lenny, it's you.
It can't be me.
Hold on. Let me mute myself and you tell me. Yeah, I got mine on.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It was just like it sounded like a little game or something.
I can mute that. I mean, I can edit it out.
All right, keep going.
Yeah.
I bet.
So what you were saying, Teresa?
I said it. I mean, we don't. In Americans, what ancestors?
What ancestors, huh?
Yeah, because we're not really a country. Technically, we're a criminal enterprise. There's nothing that's unifying about America as far as its history. The descendants of the Africans have a different history than the descendants of the Irish, who have a different history than the descendants of the English and the Native Americans. And there's really very little unifying us.
Well, because we're all blended and all our DNA is blended and intertwined, and some of us don't know where we come from. I want to, Paul, what's your thoughts?
I think the first thing, let me just say, I'm calling on the spirit of Lorraine Hansberry and Malcolm X, who are to my right and to my left. Brothers and sisters, we always got to honor the ancestors. And so it becomes very critical when we think about this in the context of we have to be very wise about how we continue to indict European culture based on the lack of what we've been able to do for ourselves. Do I need to repeat that?
Break it down. Break it down one more level.
So how many generations removed from slavery do I have to give you before I take that away from being your major excuse for your ability to do for self.
Okay, so let me retort that with this, and kind of like stick in the context of the book, right? There's a ritual in the book when a woman becomes pregnant, and they do a ritual and a seance, and she becomes, somebody starts speaking through her, and they are communicating with the infant, the child, because the child has direct communication with the ancestors
At
and
2
they're
months. At
yeah
2 months.
and they're speaking to the child, and the child is speaking back to them, right?
Sure.
And with that being said, they have an understanding from the child lineage and
Absolutely.
And who the child parents are and their grandparents are, on which ancestors they're speaking to and the ancestors that they're tapping into, because it's intentional, right?
Absolutely.
I think what's different about us in America is that we're having an identity crisis, and we don't really know beyond the recording of who our ancestors were and our great great grandparents were. So we have really no idea on which direction or where to look to tap into to communicate. And so when we start saying things like that, that is assuming that we're just lazy and we're not doing it, versus that we can't do it.
No. I'm not saying we're intellectually, or I'm not saying that we're lazy. If nothing else, Booker T. Washington, Mary McLeod Bethune taught us there's a blueprint for this. Period. Full stop. We could look at their blueprints of what both of them left us institutions. Now, that said, I don't want to crisscross conversations here between what Somé is attempting to do with this book through ritualism and our ability to do for ourselves in a free market enterprise. Those are two separate conversations. I will say this, the beauty of this Somé book for me, I read it in 1996 as a result of my Rite of Passage program. It puts us into African-centered pedagogy and thought in such a beautiful, seamless way. And where I agree with you, brother, is we haven't had these kind of models to let us know that we have a way of thinking and feeling that has nothing to do with the Arab, number one, and number two, the European. So I agree with you. I was just making a general statement that before we get too far along the lines of indicting this European for what they've done to us, and rightfully so, I just want to make sure that we're also able to have that conversation in the context of Marcus Garvey, in the context of Ida B. Wells, in the context of other giants who gave us blueprints. That's all I'm saying.
No,
Is
I set
everybody
it off like that, Paul, because I think in our era, there's this thing where people think that just because you're expressing some type of interest and ancestral understanding, that somewhere you're going to come into vilifying the enemy, right? And
Yes.
this doesn't do that. This doesn't do that. I mean,
It doesn't do that at all.
the man's name is to be a friend to the stranger, right? So
Sure.
he's not here for that. And so I threw it out there to kind of just get this out the way, right?
Sure.
That our existence, as much as our existence is about the struggle and the fight, we have to be clear about what struggle and what fight.
Absolutely.
Now, he did have a sense of anger.
Yes.
At the Jesuits who had come in, and it was his own identity crisis, because I feel that he felt as if his lineage and his life, his legacy had been snatched away from him, even though if we look at it in the American way of life and the way that they talk to us, it would be said that he was given a better life. They would say that we took you from a primitive life into one that was more sophisticated. You learned to speak other languages. You were educated. There were so many things about his life that led him to a place that brought him to so much anger that he actually pushed the priest out of the window, which led him back to a place. So he did have a sense of anger there with the establishment, we'll call it. And so that is the experience that a lot of people have had, trying to identify with, I'll just say, Blackness for sake of, argument. And if we look at this in a parallel of being able to see it on different levels and relate it to our own experiences as well as others.
Yeah, and I also like the fact of how he ultimately dealt with that anger by just going back to his people and becoming more of who he was, right? Like,
right.
Yeah, he had those moments when he lashed out.
That's an easy transition.
It wasn't.
And that he didn't have like the agency over that neither. Mm-hmm. It was at the it was at the expense of the elders.
I was gonna say he didn't need the agency, right? Because like even that framing is like a very Western way of thought. It's like, I need to do it by myself. I need to find my roots. And then there's like the video montage of him, doing stuff by himself. But like he went back to his people, and his people surrounded him and were like, hey, we're watching him. They're discussing him.
Not exactly. When he first came back, they kind of didn't know what to do with him because they didn't recognize there was the dichotomy of, this. They had never, I think it was said, we've not dealt with a person with the knowledge from the Western world or that part and the knowledge of us, and they were afraid of that or wary of. I don't know. Because I'm not sure what word I want to use, but there was an emotion that was felt.
There was like some fear with
Leary.
The new and uniqueness of him, which is a natural reaction. But I think my broader point is that as a community, they felt a responsibility for him, and whether it was out of fear or out of obligation,
spearheaded by his uncle.
Right. His what do they call it? His
mentor,
brother, mother. What do they call
it? The brother, mother.
Yeah.
The brother,
his
mother,
mother's
right?
brother, which is
they decided
father, mother, something. Yeah, father, mother.
Yeah.
But
the uncle, right?
And so
they all did this for him, and he was faking his way through it at first, but with help.
They said you saw an upside down.
What?
Hey,
cool.
This dude is 19, 20 years old doing something he's supposed to do when he's 9. You know what I'm saying?
Correct.
He's supposed to. They said get naked and walk out of there. He had to get naked like a grown man. They're like, whoa, this is not. This is not what we looking for. Like, this is not the
expectation. No, he said, but even that right there, right? Let's spin that. Even that moment when he realized that this was real, and I've been accepted into initiation, and I have to strip myself naked with and be around 11 through 15-year-olds, and here I am, 19, 20. And we're walking through the village, and he described it as an emotional scene. Sisters were crying, mothers were crying. They were preparing them like last meals and things because they knew that there was a strong possibility that their baby boys wouldn't come back home.
It was death.
But they had to do it because otherwise you would stay a boy for the rest of your life. So you either go out and come back a man or don't come back at all. And that's a hard thing for a parent to see their son going out and possibly have to go through this and come back because they might not come back. So that was a very emotional scene. And the idea of stripping naked And I think that is a metaphor of you're about to go into this with all that stuff that you had covering you. You're gonna leave all that behind. All those, that ego and all of that is gone. You're gonna get out here, you're gonna sit in this sun 20 feet away and just stare at this tree.
Stare at this tree.
Do you know
That's
what
you
was
gonna do.
what was interesting about that part? And maybe I just realized that I also listened to the abridged version. Maybe it's missing from there. But what I didn't catch in that description of that scene, that the writing of that scene, is there was no shame that he expressed about getting naked, which was interesting to me, because that's a very Western ideal. It's like you shame your body, and he didn't mention that at all. It's like, oh, that's really interesting. We normally don't read books where we get to experience that happening. It wasn't about his body shame. It was more about what you're talking about, Lenny. It was more about parents letting go of their children, journey to the unknown, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Let me say this part. Let me just say this. The whole initiation process, they were naked. But go, Paul.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, family, that it's this idea for me when I first read this book. It was introduced in such a way that we have to be careful when we go back to knowledge of self. We go back as a virus. We go back as a virus, and this Western stuff has to be stripped out of us. Things that we consider to be normative. We have to do a recheck. Everything that we do, everything that we think, if we're going to reintroduce ourselves back into African folklore and mythology, we come back as a virus. And that pneumonia has to be cured first. I want that to resonate. That's a hard process.
Man, he talks about that.
So that's the metaphor of stripping naked.
They have a name for it. Okay. Yeah, they have a name for it. How this wisdom eats at our ability to understand. And that was part of the reason why they had concerns, because he had been educated in this space. And so with that, the brain capacity, they were concerned, could the brain unlearn what needed to be unlearned to make room for what needed to be?
And acceptance.
Yeah.
And we listen and we don't judge type stuff. You know what I mean? You have to accept that and not judge it in order to embrace it. But here's the thing though. It was a little different for him, and it wasn't a total of unlearning and relearning something different, because we have to understand that he encountered a contumely when he was a child, right?
Contumely.
Is that a word, sir?
What now?
Contumely. The contumely. The contumely.
The brother's been reading.
Yeah.
That sounds super European.
Contumely.
Right?
How you say it, Donovan? How you say it?
I said it the same way. Contumely. Mr. Spock, an elf, a leprechaun.
Leprechaun. Me Lucky Charms. He spotted a lucky charm. But anyway, and the thing about that was his mother protected him. But let me make this point though. My point was, like, these things going back and getting reintroduced into his tribe, there wasn't a lot of things that he had to unlearn, because he had already experienced and retained that experience from his childhood when he encountered the contumely. And remember, his mother was very vehemently concerned and adamant about him not expressing and sharing that with anybody, because in their tribe, once you encounter a contumely, you are ready for initiation. And she was worried that he was too young to become a man, or independent, what they say, and a contributor to the. It wasn't a man; it was being an independent contributor to the village. That's powerful.
Hey, these contumely. Do you think about how small they are? Like, these aren't just regular dwarfs. Like these are like small people. He said he was chasing a rabbit, remember? And he's about to jump on a rabbit, and he looks down in the hole and see a little man. Say, hey, why would you do that to your
describe
brother?
that scene right there for the listeners.
I mean, from what I recall, he's out in the bush, wherever, and he sees this rabbit, and he's a young man, so he's about to go get this rabbit. This rabbit's gonna be his first kill.
He had to be
And then,
no older than 4 years old.
yeah, he's chasing down this rabbit, and he's got the rabbit cornered, and he's about to kill the rabbit, and he sees a little man, and the little man tells him, like, why would you do this to your brother? This rabbit has a mother, rabbit has a family. Why would you do this? You know?
Right. And he's sitting on a stoop that looks like some stars, like a little rainbow type thing.
Right.
With the back, a portal into another world.
Right.
Like,
there's a portal into
What you
another
doing to your brother?
that's green and just green and plants and everything into this other world, this other dimension, this other planet, this other part of the universe, right? They have understandings on quantum physics and atoms and things on how to transport and portal through the universe. And this is not anything that's new. It's just new to us because we have been stripped from our imagination. And if you can't see it, if it's not two dimension, then it's not real. It's just a figment of your imagination. And that's a dumbing down of the other part of your brain that we don't use. But to understand that DNA particles that makes up your body are the same, it's the same, it takes on the same waveform as the atoms and the particles in the universe. That's why when they say when you speak it into existence, it'll come a manifestation in your brain. Those are things that are like physics. These are things that are real. So that was dope to me, you know. And that wasn't the only portal that this book talks about. Keep going, Harvey. Say what you're gonna say, Harvey.
Hey, wait a minute though, Teresa. I know you thought we was gonna get away from talking raunchy tonight because this ain't a raunchy talking book. It's really not.
I was hoping so.
I've been talking to my African
Hold
sisters,
my beer.
and I've been trying to ask them this question. I'm like, why do African brothers be lying so much? Like when I watch these movies and I be talking to them, like, why are they lying so much?
I forgot you watched those soap operas. I did start watching one though. Okay.
Listen, and the conversation I'm hearing is that the lie is around not speaking bad things. The lie is around this culture of speaking only positive things. And so the lie isn't meant to be a lie the same way we know the lie to be in our space.
So if you keep telling a woman that she's the most beautiful woman you ever seen, and all of a sudden your eyes will start to transform into somebody that's not really there. You catfish your imagination.
Tell her what she want to hear.
Hey, that's a valid coping mechanism.
You look really nice in that dress.
Just tell her what she want to hear, man.
Exactly.
You know what? I will say this. I will say this. The African brain is a different brain on the planet. And so think about this book is 30 years before what we got before we fell in love with Wakanda, right?
Yes,
but as this brother just said, this is about physics, really. I want to share a story. First time I went to Africa, I was in Ghana, and we were moving around quite a bit. And when the native Africans would leave or depart, they would always say, "I come." And it took me about a week to get used to this. So in other words, in the Western Hemisphere, when Black people getting ready to depart, we say, "I holler," or "I see you," or shout out, whatever. So, but it's a recognition that we're departing, not coming. So finally, I asked the brother, I said, "Man, I don't understand why when people are getting ready to leave, they say, 'I come.' In other words, I'm returning." And the brother said to me without hesitation around this whole physics piece, we don't embody this notion of departure the way other cultures do. We always believe in the context of the return. And I said, wow, you know, here in the Western Hemisphere, we are just so out of place with everything we're doing. We've been turned upside down and inside out. And so for me, when I look at on page 6 of this book, and I want to see if, who will remember when he's talking about the ability to read minds. Do y'all remember that passage?
Yes. I got something deeper into what you just said. I want to piggyback on you. I want you to pin that
I'm
right
pause. Okay, so I'm gonna pause there, but I just want to say that this book hooked me many years ago because in the Western world, we have something called synchronicity. There's a whole body of knowledge around synchronicity. So in other words, what synchronicity is you thinking about your mom or your brother and sister, and as you thinking about them, they call you. Mm-hmm. We call that synchronicity in the Western Hemisphere. Mm-hmm. But in this world in which we came out of, there's no such thing as synchronicity because there's no difference between the natural and the supernatural. So I just wanted to share that on page 6 because he literally said that he had forgot that we're not supposed to be able to read minds in this space. When he comes from a culture where reading minds is normative.
Hey, Paul, he said he was in the classroom. He said he had got to the States and he was going through college and he was just short the first day, find out what's going on, and then come back to class when it's time to take the exams and read the professor's minds. And he said that one day the professor asked him, "Are you reading my mind?" And he goes, "No, of course not. Those things are not possible in the modern world."
Hey,
stock response number 2 coming up.
So
that is funny as hell to me.
I want to piggyback on what Paul said about I'm coming and the idea of the return, right? So this part was omitted from the audiobook. Upon his granddaddy's departure, I just had Teresa read this too. Let me explain how his granddad died and what happened. He was with his granddad. It was just him and his granddad, and they were away from the house, right? His granddaddy laid down, and his granddaddy told him, he prophesied that you're going to go away, and and you're not going to want to go away, but you're going to go away and learn something, and and you're going to have to do this and come back, and it's going to be very uncomfortable for you. So his granddaddy just told him that. He said he didn't really comprehend what his granddaddy was saying, and his granddaddy just made sure that he left that prophecy on him. He laid down. I think he had went outside or something, and he came back. His granddaddy wasn't doing so well. When his mom came back in, he was nagging his mom, talking about, I'm hungry. I hadn't eaten all day. She started breastfeeding him. She saw her dad. His dad saw their dad. He was terminally ill. So they called the Jesuits. I think the dad came back with some of the Jesuits, and they took him to the dispensary or the hospital, right? And he passed away at the hospital, and it was like miles away from his home. So he died in the hospital, right? The elders came to the hospital, and his dad came, and he gave him like this little talisman. Now, this is his granddaddy's dead body, and he put the talisman in his granddad's hand. And his eyes came open, and he sat up, and it was normal for everybody. And he raised up out of the bed. He has since transitioned, and he walked 4 miles to his home, and with everybody. And they said it took them hours to get there, but they said that. Hold on. I know y'all don't like me reading, but It
Read
says
it, dog. It's your,
grandfather's.
it's your show, dog. Read, dog.
It said grandfather's toast was set up as if moved by an invisible hand, then became immobile. Following a simple impulse, his legs bent over the side of the bed, although they were cracking like dry leaves. Fascinated and speechless, I watched. Everybody seems captivated. Then he began to rise as if under a slow and steady impulse. His body resembled one of the village spiritual statues. I was not only fascinated, but also afraid that he might lose control and break his back. No one could possibly get up this way without using one or both of their hands to balance their weight. But grandfather's only contact with the ground was with his feet, his bare feet, and one could see that the muscles of the lower part of his legs compressed and strained under the thin, dark skin. Presently, he was standing straight up. This miracle completed, I rushed to him and grabbed his right hand, the one that was free. My father made a movement to stop me, but decided against it. Keeping his authoritative tone, my father spoke to my grandfather in secret primitive language. Grandfather said nothing in response. He just walked out of the room, preceded by my father and followed by the delegation. I walked at his side, still holding his hand. He moved strangely, too straight, too rigid, unnatural, yet very conscious of any obstacle. Once outside, the crowd joined and made a circle around us. Although I was too young to understand the significance of this ritual, while all these people were not speaking with one another, I was glad to return home with grandfather, even if he did not seem to want to speak to me. The 4 mile walk took an equal amount of hours. Dead people don't walk very fast. They're not in a hurry. We must have to reach home around noontime for our arrival. We are we were each walking in its own shadow. People we encountered along the way stopped, left the road, and assumed a somber mood. I just want to hold on, get back. Let me fast forward. It said, "Why do the dead walk where I come from? They walk because they are still as important to the living as they were before, and even more meaningful, the breadth and the depth of the funeral ritual. We do not hide our bodies away because we want to see the bodies help us remember the person's life and as good as they did. They need to remember well on their way to becoming the ancestors." Hold on. But basically, what he said was every dead person, when they walk, they must go back to the place where they're supposed to die to, where they're supposed to die. So you're supposed to die in your bed, and if you don't die in your bed, and I believe you have to be a certain character and a certain and have a certain position in the village. But he got up and walked because he had to go to his bed and then die. I mean, and then and then they take his body and do the funeral ritual.
That got you, dog.
Yeah, it got me, bro. Yeah, it
What
got me.
about it? What about that concept of dying where you're
Zombies.
supposed to touches you?
Zombies.
He said, "I'm going to stop here for a moment and make a point. Different cultures have different relationships with their dead. I know very well in the culture of skyscrapers and high technology, dead people don't walk. Instead, they are placed in nice, expensive caskets and driven to the cemetery in elegant black cars, but are quickly out of sight so that life can go on. My grandfather died on Mission Hill, thus in a foreign land. He was an elder and a leader of great power and should have died at home. The only way to correct a death of such an important person when it occurs in the wrong place is to walk the dead home. Once the funeral ritual is at the end, his body will be carried to the burial ground."
I mean, that's the point of his whole work, dog. And that's why he said we so fucked up. Because our zombies, our ancestors are just walking around lost. They haven't gotten home. That's the premise.
And you know what else this made me think of? I'm doing a lot of talking on this podcast.
You excited? That's all. That's good.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this book. This made me think of a couple of things. This made me think of how we just have a lot of unintentional casual sex and make babies out of just happenstance. And there's no family, there's no type of tradition or structure of mom and dad.
Nobody checking on that belly to see who that is.
We just have women, different babies, different dads, mixed races, mixed cultures.
Whoa.
Religions.
Oh,
what I'm saying is mixed ideas up under one roof, and there's no cohesion. There's not one person saying that we're going to do this. Everybody kind of get to do what everybody wants to do, and there is no one set of rituals and traditions.
Shared agreement.
Shared
understanding.
Shared understanding.
Come on, man. All right. Well, since you're I just don't agree with that. You're romanticizing what he's describing in the book. Do you think everybody in his village had a shared idea? Do you think everyone in the same household shares ideas? That's like I don't know where we think that there has to be homogeny in order for something good to happen, right? I think it's great that people can build shared cultures, but like I feel like you're kind of going off the rails when you're like talking about, oh, we're having mixed races. There's not a man and a woman. Like I don't think that's what this book is about, man.
Well,
that's what he meant, though.
Let me not say mixed races, right? Let me say
whatever, but it doesn't matter. I mean, I think even in that village, they can have disagreements on rituals and still be humans as the experience. I don't think it's about, casual sex. Like I don't even know where you.
Well, let me say this, Steve, to retort that. Like let's just put us in the village and try to abandon the traditions of the village, right? How do you think that'll work out if there are things that are important that are obligatory that has to happen, right? But you don't believe in it, so your family is not going to participate in it, right? Or
is that the way is that what happens if you don't believe in it? You don't participate in it?
Why would you participate in something as dramatic as a initiation if you don't believe in it?
Oh, the mom didn't want him to go the first time he was supposed to go for his initiation
because he was too young.
Well, not according to their traditions.
He started by happenstance, right?
Okay.
But he eventually went through it, right? So these things, like, let's just say, let's take on. Keep going. Right? Let's say we all independent thinkers, and we live in this village where these things are very important to the ideas in the village. How long do you think you will be able to last in that as a Dogon? I mean, how you pronounce them? The Goji?
They were Daguerre.
Daguerre.
Mm-hmm.
How long do you think that you'll be able to last in with the Daguerre people?
Well, I think the Daguerre people in their community can decide who they want to be in their community. So if you're doing something so offensive to them, I'm sure you wouldn't last very long. But I don't think that they're disparaging like another village or another people with a set of beliefs, right? Like I don't think that's the point of this book, to divide or to suggest that getting back to our roots or getting back to our spirituality is a single thing. I think it's more of him communicating his personal experience about what his roots are and what his spirituality is, and for me it's less a you should and more of a, I mean, I guess he is saying that you should return to your roots, but I think those roots can be whatever they are. Like, where do I go back to? I'm quarter Japanese. Right, like what am I supposed to do? I don't think, but that I shouldn't be like, oh, I'm just going to abandon everything, or oh, I have to form my own thing. I think he's giving a deeply personal story that has a huge connection to broader themes of finding a sense of self in a world that's capitalized and colonized and commoditized.
Hey, I want to hear from Paul, and I don't want to take away from what you just said, Steve. Lenny, John Mubidi's book, African Religions and Philosophy, the brother went across the continent studying different people's orientations to God and the universe. He found out that everybody was monolithic. Everybody had an origin story that referred to the oldest person in their village. Everybody had multiple names for God. And it was an understanding that everybody had a multiple name for God, and there wasn't an argument over what God's name was. But to Steve's point, if they didn't like you, they just killed you. Or you had to
That's
go.
interesting. I mean, and very finite
Yeah. I mean, but
death.
but there was
Yeah.
but to Steve's point, there was no argument over ideology. Like the expression and understanding was consistent. But I want to hear from Paul. What you thinking, Paul, about
Well,
about Steve and Lenny and how we going
I
back and
think,
forth with this?
well, I agree with elements of what both of them are saying. In that, I do believe, though, we have our esoterics and we have our rituals. I mean, come on now, we got the historic Black Church. We got the Divine Nine, we got the Eastern Stars, we got the Urban League, we got the NAACP. I can go on. We got the African Lodge, Prince Hall. We got all that. What is frustrating to us here in the Western Hemisphere still yet is we haven't found a need to full stop unify in spite of those differences. That's a different conversation for me as I think about how we reinstitute or reclaim African-centered principles that seek to make us whole again. So in other words, we can have both conversations. I'm under no illusion that here in America, at least in America, we have tons of rituals and ways of being and ways of behaving. But unfortunately, around 1952, 1953, we decided to put a high premium on social integration. And that high premium on social integration disjointed us in such a way that we still haven't recovered from that. And so we just got to understand sort of what happened to us in that way that's still causing us to be out of kilter. We do have, so for me, when I think about our ethnicity as African Americans, we are a deep and true ethnicity that's given the world a whole lot ritualistically. But what we're continuing to be frustrated about is we have yet to realize what Garvey and Mary McLeod was trying to do in terms of racial dignity. We have yet to realize that collectively. That said, not everybody is going to be able to do what this brother did in this rite of passage. You see, if we unified all Black people tomorrow, not every Black people needs to go through this fundamentally.
Right.
A segment of us need to do this. And so we call this in ancient Kemet the elite spiritual class in Kemet, right? At Taseti, right? At Ta-Nehisi. This is what we call it back then. So this is not an all or nothing proposition, family, in terms of realizing what this brother is laying out as a blueprint for us to be able to do for a select few. And I'll just pause there.
Paul, I said earlier that he said that we did have to do an atonement for our ancestors. Now he sound like I've heard him in multiple spaces speak about that ritual. What do you think about that one? Or is that not the same?
Brothers, one of the things about diving into what it means to be African is we think there is a way in which everybody has to move in step simultaneously. That's impossible. If you get 5 Chinese in a room, they're going to think very differently, but there's some fundamentals they're going to agree on. If you get 5 Ashkenazi Jews in a room, they're going to disagree vehemently on some things, but then there's some fundamentals they're going to agree on. We are yet to decide the debate between W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington, and it's 2024. Principally speaking,
Jay-Z and Nas.
Tupac and Biggie, Jay-Z and Nas, all that stuff.
Mhm.
Because we are absolute. We come to the table as absolute. As absolute. We always come to the table as this or that. And culturally, that's not African. That's not Africoid either.
It's an Africoid?
Yes. There's a difference.
Elaborate.
So to be African is to somehow be tied to that geographic landmass. But you got Africoid people all over the world, right? Who aren't tied to that land, who look just like you and me.
Gotcha.
Okay.
I mean, you have people in Fiji who
Gotcha.
look just like you and me, literally.
Africoid. That's okay. That recognizes their national identity and their lived experience, but also their physical features.
But their physical features, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you have.
Got you.
I mean, you have over 100 million, according to Renoko Rashidi, rest his soul. You got over 100 million Africoid prototypes in India alone. In India alone.
Right.
But they're not African, and they're not tied. They just have that gene. They have that DNA pool, that gene pool that we have.
Is that what they
That phenotype?
That phenotype. What's that, Harvey?
The Druids. Is that a name of one of the groups?
The Dalits.
The Dalits. Okay.
Dalits. Yes.
All right. But isn't everybody African? Like we all came from the same place, right?
I think that's
No, I don't.
You want to get into that?
That's controversial.
That's being debated now. Every human being walking the planet, and this is where I agree with that theory philosophically, anatomically speaking, is African, because this is the birthplace of mankind and womankind. But culturally speaking, everybody on the planet does not have an African framework by nature or by class.
100% agree.
Would the Africoid also come with that culture? Is that because there's a kinship, a shared kinship of people, melanated folk. Is that what you were speaking to as well?
Yeah, yeah. So typically Africoid people have a reverence for the femininity, a belief in one God. No person can rise above the community. I am because we are, right? We are because I am. That
collective sense.
A collective sense. Yeah, you find that everywhere you find Black people, you have that. I just want to go back to the point that the beauty of this book, though, for me, is that we would be hard-pressed to think that as wonderful as his recreation story is, that we all have to do this. This is a tall order.
Yeah, he didn't suggest that everybody go through that one.
Yeah, this is a tall order.
It's something that is almost impossible to recreate.
He said his ancestors pulled down a goat skin,
burning skins of animals and create
beat on it, open up a portal, jump in it.
Yeah,
kid jumped out, came out a blob of slob.
Blob, right? Or or going into shallow waters and finding out that it's infinitely deep and you're able to breathe underwater, like dolphins, and it's a lot of things.
Oh, what did he say about his granddaddy Leonard about looking in the pot of water every morning, checking his farm?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he shot the arrow, the upside down arrow. What's the word for it? Start with a P. They have a term for it. So you want me to tell that story?
Yeah, tell the whole story. It's about looking in the. Yeah, tell the story.
So his granddad would look into this pot with a photo of his crop, and he would look for invasive species that had come and threatened to take his cattle or his livestock. And if he sees like an intruder coming in to, a coyote or whatever the case may be, that can eat, possibly endanger his livestock, he has this arrow, and this upside down arrow. He said he saw his granddad shoot well, first of all, he observed an intrusive species
I
coming
have no
into
idea what an upside down arrow is. I
yeah,
cannot envision
an animal coming up to his
upside down
livestock
arrow.
that's 8 miles away, and he grabbed an arrow and shot it through a hole in the ceiling. And the
What
next
is an
morning,
upside down arrow?
his daddy drug the animal inside the house. It had pierced the animal, but the arrow came back. The arrow always come back, and it always returns. And in the book, it go a little bit deeper about the arrow. They use that in war, and they use those arrows in the colonial war, fighting against the French. And what it is, the arrow, you tell the arrow who you want to hit, and it's like a guided missile. It will go, you shoot it through the hole, and it will go and hit the person or with the object or whatever thing it is and return back. That's the same arrow that showed up at his funeral. But anyway,
Paul, what am I doing with this dart? Am I tripping? He's talking about
Yes.
upside down arrow, and I can't do it. Am I tripping?
No.
Is this the
Well-
Western space that has taken up my brain? I cannot envision it. An upside down
Think of-
arrow. Is it
Well,
shooting
well,
this
that's
way?
a dart, though. No, that's a dart. Like, so think
It's a
about
dart.
like you know how the tip of an arrow is shaped like a letter A.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just turn it upside down, then it'll be a V.
So that's what I'm
Think
saying,
about
like
it like that.
this.
Yeah,
it's a V right there.
yeah,
Man,
yeah.
I just envision a crossbow being shot and through a hole with an arrow, a magical arrow, right? And
His
you know,
grandfather.
What'd you say, Steve?
Oh no, keep going.
But I don't want to get into talking about this mythical stuff on the podcast for somebody who hadn't really read the book, because
That's the best
then,
part.
but your Western mind could take over as your mind would do and be like, man, what the hell they talking about, right? Because there's a lot of things like you like, what the hell?
I mean,
Right?
that's the point,
But-
right? Like, can you dismiss that when you read this book? Like, what the hell, Teresa? Was you like what? Oh, Teresa, I gotta know what you was thinking, dude. Did you believe him? Do you think he's lying?
I don't think he's lying. I think that everybody's experience is different. And, I really don't like these types of books just only because I like reading them. I don't like discussing them because it's not my place to discuss someone else's reality. Like whatever their reality is their reality. I have no idea. So anything that I say is just a guess or conjecture.
That's so safe.
It's his experiences. I don't
That's so
like to
true,
discuss.
though.
If somebody tells me something, I'm not gonna sit there and tell them, "Oh no, that's not what it was."
No.
I
But
have
were
no
you-
idea.
We're not
No,
asking
no.
you to say
I
that it is
understand
true or
that.
not. We're asking your thoughts behind it. Like, what did you
That
think?
my thought would be whether he is telling the truth or not.
No, well, let me ask you a different question. Were you amused by his story? Like, whoa, like, how did you respond to his story?
I don't know. I'm a very open person.
You staring at the tree right now, Teresa.
Yeah, absolutely.
Staring at the tree.
I'm very open.
You're staring at the tree. You're hot. All you
Things
can feel is
happen.
ants.
I believe that if something came in here to attack my child, that I could take it on. I believe that these are things that your experiences are your experiences, and I think that this book is that. It is his experience, and it is an example of his life and what he went through, and I think that this is all real. I don't believe that one thing makes something else not. So whatever I believe has a space inside of someone else's belief. I don't think that things cancel other things out.
Now, that is fair. And let me share with you what I call the three great mysteries and the correlation between this Darga being a part of our paradigm in relation to how we buy into other paradigms who have equal, if not bigger, folklore and mythology. And I'm just going to raise 3 points. If we're Muslim, we believe that an illiterate man named Muhammad went up into a cave and received the Quran. What? Are you serious? Some people believe that. If we're Christian and believe in Maryam, we believe that she was a virgin. What? And brought forth a savior.
And there
If we are, I'm sorry.
And there was a talking snake.
And there was a talking snake.
Yeah.
We believe, if we're Jewish or if we're Hebrew, we believe that this man parted the Red Sea. So these gigantic stories,
no
these over-the-top mythologies are very real in terms of how Black people have had to deal and cope over the last 1,000 years, chiefly among survival. Again, I want to go back to the source of this. And if we go back to, if we look at page 226, for those of us who have a copy of the book,
right,
what he's
my
really,
book is a different version from your book. Your book look different.
Okay, yeah, man.
What chapter is 226?
That's going to be chapter 18, returning to the source.
Okay, mine is 225, but go.
Okay, I just want to read this line to you in terms of a beautiful piece of folklore here.
Hold on, before you read that line.
Yes, sir.
That's a great segue into our portion of the podcast we call lit bars. Lit bars is any literary term, phrase, or sentence, or any passage that jumped out while reading.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Portion of the podcast we call lit bars. Paul, it seems like you are going to introduce your lit bars.
Okay, I'm definitely going to introduce my lit bar.
There you go. So you can go read your passage.
I appreciate you, sir. This here is phenomenal for me. Traditional education consists of three parts: enlargement of one's ability to see, destabilization of the body's habit of being bound to one plane of being, and the ability to voyage transdimensionally and return. Wow. Now, you know, that's no different than Prophet Muhammad riding the magic carpet, which we call the prayer rug today.
Let me get it one more time, Paul. Let me make sure I get
that
it
last
one
one was
more
the hard
time.
one.
Run it one more time, Paul, if you don't mind. Just one more time. One more time.
Traditional education consists of three parts: enlargement of one's ability to see. As Dr. Clark would say, it's not about our eyesight, it's about our insight. Okay? Destabilization of the body's habit of being bound to one plane of being. What is there is here, and what is here is there. We cross dimensions. And then three, the ability to void transdimensionally. And so this is why Anthony Browder, who is deep into chematology, he talks about this whole notion of, in Nubia, we broke the space of time, and we could go back and forth between this time and that time. And so that's why we buried our ancestors elaborately. So this becomes very important in terms of how we open the doors to reclaim our folklore as quickly as we reclaim or navigate, as Dr. Clark would say, to other forms of spirituality that maybe keep us in a state of disillusion. Does that make sense, family?
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. I want to say this. Besides a lot of that, there's a lot of, one of the things that I got from these rituals and traditions that he shared, with starting with the name. And when I was telling you guys about how 2 months into a woman's pregnancy, they do the seance and they talk to the child, and the child, goes back and forth with them about what the ancestors say, right? So during that process, the child earns a name. But the child, from my understanding and comprehension of the reading, the child name comes from what the child commits to. And whatever the child say, hey, this is what I'm gonna bring into this world when I get here, that's where the name come from. And the name reflects that communication that the child said before he or she is even born into the world. So with that, there was something else that touched me. Um,
Dog, as
the
bad as I want to know what touch you, I want to hear your lip bars, dog. Because you
first 5 years of the child's life is spent with the grandparents, and the grandparents are considered brothers and sisters, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing I could think about when I read that was like how your parents are the ones that are not the ones that are popular, and and they have to instill the discipline and the structure and the strictness, and your grandparents will come and clean that up, be like, yeah, I know your mother said this or your father said this, and but it controls your environment from birth to 5 years old, where you're still getting poured into in your most malleable stages by the elders, your grandparents, right? Then you have the initiation. Then after you go through the initiation, now you have to contribute to the village, and then you have at the end the mourning, when you pass and you transition, the village have to mourn so many tears to create a river so you could swim across to get to the land of the ancestors. And that's a form of accountability too, because you have to do right by people in order to draw that type of emotion out when you transition and when you pass. So this whole thing
they'll leave you on the
is
side
in
of the road.
line with accountability to your others, which
Good
led
point.
me to my
Good point.
lit bar. And my lit bar is traditional African education ensures the survival of the collective by making sure that the individual knows his or her place and responsibilities in the life of the group. We speak a lot about that.
Yeah.
I have another one. Westerners have no sense of boundaries. They want to know everything. The universality of a thing makes them feel that they have the right to probe, to look, to take apart, including people. Um, is another one. Whites have erased the memories of the ways of our people and the natural order of things. And the last one, when I was growing up, being able to love, to be loved, was the most important thing in the world. One's capacity for love was the measure of one's worth. So all those things go back into what I was saying about accountability and your responsibility to others in order for you to make it across to the ancestors.
Dog, you
Teresa, do
sound
you
like
have any lip bars?
I
you
Today?
sound like a
don't.
changed person,
Okay.
dog.
Who? Who sound like a changed person?
You sound like
Um,
you've been touched. dog.
I have. Donovan, what are your lip bars?
Um, modern Africa does not exist. What is magic but the ability to focus energy and thought to get what is magic but the ability to focus energy and thought to achieve a goal? Why is it that the modern world can't deal with its ancestors? There's usually a significant violence done to something that has to be translated, and by forcing the language of the colonizer upon us, it was possible at the same time to instill the very culture and worldview embodied by that language.
there's also an importance of peer pressure too to transform and be like the others that are around you. That's a real thing. Steve, you have any lit bars?
Yeah, I have two, and they go to the discussion you and I were having about ritual in the community. One is ritual is the language of the soul. It's the spirit's way of reaching into the realm of the unseen. Um, and I just, I thought that that was a really good, very concentrated, distilled way of explaining the role of ritual in this book. And then the other one is without ritual, the community is like a body without a heart. And that really just speaks to, I think, the way he was feeling and the role that ritual plays in his life and his specifically his right initiation ritual of coming back and filling his heart. Right, his heart had been stolen or clouded, and then he can, with ritual, he has rediscovered himself and has his sense of purpose. So I thought that was super strong.
I know, Harvey, you said you didn't have anything, but you said you wanted to read something.
Right.
Okay.
So shout out to blackgodwisdom.com too, by the way. My name is Malidoma. It means roughly be friends with the stranger enemy. Because the Daguerreotypes believe that every individual comes into this life with a special destiny, some names are programmatic. They describe the tasks of their bearers and constitute a continual reminder of the child the responsibilities that are waiting ahead. A person's life project is therefore inscribed in the name she or he carries. As my name implies, I am here in the West to tell the world about my people in any way I can and take back my people the knowledge I gain about this world. My elders are convinced that the West is in danger as indigenous cultures it has decimated in the name of colonism. There is no doubt that at this time in history, Western civilization is suffering from a great sickness of the soul. The West's progressive turning away from functioning spiritual values, its total disregard for the environment and the protection of natural resources, the violence of inner cities with their problems of poverty, drugs, and crime, spiraling unemployment and economic disarray, and growing intolerance towards people of color and the values of other cultures. All of these trends, if unchecked, will eventually bring about a terrible self-destruction. In the face of this global chaos, the only possible hope is self-transformation. Unless we as individuals find new ways of understanding between people, ways that can touch and transform the heart and soul deeply, both indigenous cultures and those in the West will continue to fade away, dismayed that all the wonders of technology and all the philosophical isms and all the planning of global corporations would be helpless to reverse this trend. That's the intro.
Yep, I knew I heard that somewhere. Well, we to the part of the podcast where we would rate this book. And Teresa, rate this book 1 through 10.
I'll give it an 8.
Okay. You give it an 8?
An 8.
Okay. Donovan, rate this book 1 through 10.
I give it an 8 as well.
Okay. I'm gonna give it a 9. I'm going to give it a 9. Steve, rate this book.
You're muted.
I give this a 10 out of 10. I didn't read it, but I just ordered the book yesterday. I didn't read I listened to the audiobook. I didn't read the prose. Let me clarify there.
I'm bugging on your 10, Steve. I'm laughing at the 10.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing that we haven't mentioned, he is a beautiful writer. He's really an excellent writer in what could be challenging content to immerse the reader in if they're not predisposed to, which I don't think I am. But to bring you into that world, I think he does so effortlessly. It's not too much, it's not too little. Everything really flows. So I was really impressed by his writing technically.
Being that here's the most intriguing thing about that is this is his third language.
Mhm.
English is his third language.
That's
So
wild.
when he came here to study, he was just learning English.
Right.
So, and that was when he returned from the Jesuit school, went through the initiation, and when he was sent over here to go to what they call university, um, when he came over here to go to university, he was trying to learn the English language as well as everything else, our customs and all this other stuff. So that's the most remarkable thing about this whole thing. Paul, scale of 1 to 10.
15.
Okay, I knew you were going to give it high.
I
Yeah.
give it a 15, and I'll tell you why. It's foundational,
Yes.
and we don't run across a lot of things down on a day-to-day basis, family, that's foundational, that stretches our mind in a way that I think the Europeans called it. They call it boundary spanning. Did this book boundary span? So I give it a 15. And I want to say this: I give it a 15, but this is not a book that I recommend everybody to read because it's so multi-layered. It's beautifully written, as Steve has mentioned. The prose is wonderful, but this is a book where you may have to read one page 4 times before you get it. And so I give it a 15, my man.
Yeah. Nice. They didn't have you on the last book, did they, Paul?
No.
Yeah. It was not foundational, but that's a conversation for another day.
Feel salty about
Yes.
a full transparency.
It was, yeah. It did me dirty.
Listen, your pattern did you dirty, so you got to take full responsibility of that. Yeah, so back to Harvey.
Hey,
You
I want
picked
to
this
echo.
book. You got to close it out.
I got to echo Paul's 15, man. I mean, since we going there with it, because I resonated with so many different aspects of his story. So many familiar interactions. When he talked about how easy it is for him to be an African away from his village because the people in his village who would be educated would be trying to dress like Westerners. I mean, all of that, I've seen that. You know what I mean? I have seen it. I have seen it. I have seen it. And then I thought his storytelling, like Steve said, it was he told his story effortlessly, even though he talks about how painful it is to tell this story and how long it took him to prepare to tell this story, and just the dynamics of this story that he just couldn't tell because he didn't have a language for it, and it's just not to be told. So to have the privilege to have this story to me is just amazing, because it if it's a lived experience, it validates a whole lot of things that we may have been told to stay away from or not take as serious. So I really enjoyed it. I definitely enjoyed this piece.
I want to add to what you just said about telling this story.
Yeah.
This is a thought that I had earlier today. We are speaking and we're talking about him because he told his story, and we're talking about his story. So his story have created a life for him and a lifestyle, and by telling his story, it's paid his bills, and it allowed him to stay in America because his story is so remarkable and so intriguing that if you think about it, what was he? Was he a professor? I don't know if he was a
I
professor or
mean,
not. I just
I,
think he went around
I
getting
want
paid to
I
tell
want
this story.
Paul. I want Paul to speak to that because I don't know how accurate that is, Lenny. Um, I want Paul to speak to that because I was under the impression that because he fell into a male space because he was doing the male mentoring space, the male healing space, that created a platform for him. I have no idea how Paul got into him, other than through, I presume, the notion of rites of passage and what he talked about earlier. But I don't know that this paid like big bills for him, Leonard. I don't think he had a cool payout. I think he gets more notoriety after his death, but I don't know that.
I believe that what I'm saying is I believe that this paid his bills by telling this story.
I mean,
Am
he
I
said he was
correct,
able
Paul?
to send. He said he was able to send $600 a month home, right? And he said that was way more than if he was at home helping them plow a field. So he was able to generate something, right? You know, he had something, but he also talked about alienation and how, you know, he would be homeless damn near in his travels and stuff. So I don't. That's the part where I was confused. That's why I don't know that.
So I would say that Somé was hot on the lecture circuit from like 95 to 2002. He was hot on the lecture circuit. And I'm thinking he was probably getting between 1,000 and 4,000 a pop per lecture. But that was mostly him being invited by white professors in the humanities on predominantly white campuses. He has yet to have an explosion amongst what I call African-centered circles, and that to me is a letdown and travesty. Now, that doesn't mean that he doesn't speak to Black people openly, which he does, but I'm saying shortly after he published this book, he went through this period of growth of being on the college lecture circuit, and he was out there for quite a while. I don't know what this brother's doing now, to be quite honest.
No, he's deceased now, but
yeah, he's
to
transitioned.
your
He
point,
is?
Paul,
Yeah.
When he was?
what 2-3 years ago?
Really?
But there's a video of him. I'm from when he was on like tapvideo.com, like the old school school joint.
Oh, today
like,
is the anniversary of his death, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Where my drum at, man? My drum. I need to go get my drum, man.
Yeah.
I need to go get my drum, man.
Transition.
I need to get a drum beat, man. But no,
Yeah.
to Paul, to your point, the tap video is like, you know, them tap videos was old school, you know, old school. When he was lecturing a Black audience, and that's the only time I saw like that.
Wow.
Him in the old days, you know.
So he left and he returned.
Wow.
So, okay, family, hold on, family, hold on. What does it say about his transition date being the day that we have this conversation? This is not synchronous. This is what I'm saying about the supernatural. This is not by chance, is it? Or am I making too much of this?
Teresa?
Teresa, what do you think about that?
Teresa.
Miss Teresa, weigh in for us, please.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Can you explain this reality we're experiencing right now?
We won't know until we know.
Okay. Ashe.
If something starts to happen, then we'll know. If it doesn't, we'll still know.
Brother speaking.
He passed December 9th, 2021.
Brother speaking. Brother is speaking today. He like,
Wow.
I'm here, brothers. I am here. I got to get home.
Now.
I got to get to my bed. Get
I'm
me
gonna have to
to
change
my
my
bed, brother. Get me to my bed.
That I know this is where he can't. I come and I'll just that'll be what happens. And
I go.
Yeah.
I'm gone.
No.
Yeah.
No, y'all gonna be in there together talking.
No, I'm gone.
You hanging out with me?
Why y'all scared of
you
the ancestors?
I'm not scared.
I'm
I'm just not interested.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Go ahead, fix it up.
That's not the threesome I'm looking for.
Stop. You looking? Which one you looking for?
Not that one.
But there's one that you're looking for.
Possibly.
You got to talk off
Shit.
mic. Got to talk off mic.
Hey,
About that.
anyway.
It's getting late, boy.
Oh,
I hadn't done my Duolingo for today.
Teresa, I think you picked the book.
Oh, is that me?
Yeah.
I have something to say. Let me think. I get to talk. I'm gonna go with Before I Let Go.
Before I let go.
Because
Who is
if
that
I
by?
had to, I don't know, but I'll tell you.
Is that by the
It's
Frankie
it's
Beverly
it's
story?
I'm not even this girl, but because of the things you make me sit through and all of the masculinity that I have to endure, you
Kennedy
are
Ryan?
going to do a chick book. So
Kennedy Ryan.
there you go.
Am I gonna get some game on this?
I don't know. We'll see.
13
I have not
hours.
read it. I do not know. I do not know, but I hope that it's very sappy. I hope that it is full of all of the flowery things, just
Emotional
so
love
that you all
story.
can be miserable
Raw,
while you're
honest
reading.
narrative. Powerful emotional journey.
Powerful,
and a spiritual
emotional.
second chance romance.
There you
Sounds fine
go.
to me. I'm with it.
Yeah, I need to soften up some of this.
yeah.
I only
I got a
get
credit
this.
available. I got one credit available. Let me go ahead and get that credit. Paul,
There you go.
thank you so much, sir, for joining us
Thank
tonight.
you,
I know Lenny
Paul.
gonna close us out, but what you
Oh,
want to close us with, Paul?
yeah.
Thank you. I mean, thank you, man, for
Also, what's
joining
this
us,
group
man.
invitation?
Yeah, so I just typed that in because first of all, I'm family, I just gotta be honest with you. I'm still caught up in this December 9th date. That's major. I have
Yeah.
to process it. Anyway, okay, so but I have a book club called the Queen Thai Book Club. And we meet once a month and have been doing so for 4 years. And I would like to I want to put this on your heart. I would like to explore sometime in 2025. There's 5 of us in the Queen Thai Book Club. I would like to explore us coming together and doing a joint session sometime in 2025. If 2025 is not possible, maybe early 2026. But just
Man,
the
we are
invitation.
probably the most malleable and flexible book
Perfect.
club ever.
Yeah. What title? What we doing? What we doing, Paul?
Well, hey, I will keep Harvey. I'll keep you posted on that because we're actually finalizing our schedule now. By the way, we meet once a year also in a major city for 3 days and have Black Male Fellowship too, as a part of this Queen Thai Book Club. But I will let you know. I'm gonna go back to the brothers and see, let them know how wonderful this experience was, and I will, Harvey, I'll send you some ideas and some thoughts about that. But my closing remarks that I just wanted to share is I just want to say thank you. Thank you for inviting me, a stranger, into this family group. I'm feeling the love and the camaraderie, and I have learned more than I've shared. And I think I am duty bound to express the degree to which, even though I have a sense of newness here, I love each of you dearly and wonderfully, in spite of how each of us show up. And I just want to close by saying that.
But that's it.
Thank you,
All right,
Paul.
you guys.
Pleasure meeting you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Make sure that your tracks upload, and I'm gonna put. You know what? I'm going to put this on YouTube just like this. Yeah, I think we did a good job.
Thank you. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
All right.